Alright, hello, welcome back. So here we are continuing with our GUI project. And I had come across a little issue while doing it. And let me just bring this PDF over here. And if we notice, it states the following. An instance of registration list contains a list of registration pointers. And that's evident by the m underscore attendee list, and that's fine. But the following sentence didn't make much sense to me. No two registrations are allowed to have attendees with the same email address unless the names are different. Now, the way it's phrased is no two attendees in registrations are allowed to have the same email address unless the names are different. It does not talk about the registration list. Does this mean that when I create a registration, I need to ensure that the registration does not conflict with an existing instance that has the same name and the same email address? And that's what I initially thought, and I had tried to come up with a workaround for that by essentially creating, let me go into my .h, I created a static queue multimap, and because it's static, obviously, any instance of the class registration will all have access to the same variable called all registrations. And within my implementation file, I just did the following. If the list already contained that name and that value, then I'll just state, hey, we cannot add that again. And if not, then I'll add it for the first time. And this is just here for the video, just to show that. Let me go into my main. Let me just run this file again. Application output, and I'll just, my zooming in is fine. If we look, I have P1 to P4, and I have registration R1 to R4. These three people are the same. The difference is that P3 has a different email, and P1 and P2 have the same name and same email. And when we come up here, you'll see it states the first time I run through, I add the value, and I just print it out just to confirm. The second time, however, it says registration cannot be done for the same person with the same email address, which is what I thought the UML diagram, not the UML, the PDF was stating, right? And the second time for Azura and dog@gmail.com, that time it did work, which is evident right here. Azura dog@gmail.com and Azura at pup@papas.com, and that works fine. Cool. However, that does something because all I'm doing is I'm not populating the all registrations queue multimap with new values. It doesn't prevent me from creating a registration list object and adding those P1, the reg1, reg2 doesn't prevent me from doing that. And to me that didn't make sense because now it seems as though the PDF is, how can I say, not very clear in what it expects of me. And then I went to my UML diagram and I realized, oh wait a minute, I'm just a fool. If we notice in the add registration function, it is a Boolean function, which is, I made this by the way, so I should have figured it out. It's a Boolean function, which means it should return true if the registration goes through and return false if the registration fails. Which means this is the function. This function in the registration list should handle whether or not registrations have the same attendee with the same name and the same email address, not within my registration class. And I spent a good 45 minutes figuring that out, like a fool. But anyway, it is what it is, and I'm actually just going to do a git status. I'll actually add git add. I'll add these three files. Okay. Git status. No. Git add main.cpp. I'm going to add space here. Registration.cpp and registration.h. I'll just add these, right? I'll do git status again. And I'm just going to commit these and I'll say, let me think, a silly misunderstanding. And I'll correct that in a few seconds. A silly, that's not going to work. It needs to be a double quotation mark. And I'll do get push. And I'll just do my get status again. And I no need for me to add that build folder, it's too big anyway. And I'll do a clear screen. And now I will do what's actually expected of me. I'll leave all of this the same, and I'll go back to my registration.h. I will get rid of this cube multimap. I'll get rid of all of this. I will go into my registration CPP, and I'll actually get rid of all of this. Okay, and I'll also get rid of this. Cool. Now this is where we were yesterday. What I want to do instead is, within this add registration function, when I add a new registration pointer, I want to check if it already exists within my queue list, which is called m underscore attendees list, right? So if, can I just draw on you, dude? I can't. Anyway, not markup. If you don't give me access to a pen, I'm going to be very annoyed. This is cool. Can I? All right. So I'll just check here if there's any. That's terrible. I'll check here if it does exist. If the registration exists within my queue list, I'll just say, I'll print out something that states, hey, this exists. We're not going to add it again because that's redundant. And I'll return false. If I check it and find out that it doesn't exist, then hey, I can say this is valid. We'll add the new attendee and I'll populate my m underscore attendee list. And that's all I want to do, okay? That's what I want to do. So I'll go into my registration list.h. Actually, first, let me just go back here and read this. I am expected to use Qt's meta object system to access the type of registration in the registration list, which makes sense. Right, GUI application that allows users to register for a conference. The GUI should display the current list of registrations, including the respective fees, in the registration list at all times using a table widget. That's also fine. The interface should allow users to request and view the results of various operations supported by the registration list class. I'm going to have to use, I can either manually type it out or I can use Qt meta object system. Now I'll manually do that. And I am allowed to add new features to the classes in the UML diagram, although I'm not allowed to delete or change the given functions. And the way this is phrased, does that mean I'm allowed to delete or change the given members? Bad wording. I don't like this. Anyway, I can decide on the design of the GUI and it can be done manually or with Qt Designer. Cool. So what I will do is, let me go figure out QList and let me go look at QList and see if it has a contains member. Contains. I don't see contains anywhere. Do you have a find member? I don't see a find. Do I have to search the entire thing manually? Let me just look around. Append, assign, at back capacity. Okay, let's go back here and go into my registration list. Is registered. This is obviously something I can figure out later. I'm just going to get rid of this. Cool. Total registration. Total registration. Let me see what that states. Yeah, total registration is going to be for any of the three, right? So, a registration list can also return the number of attendees that are registered for the conference from an institution. Similarly, you can also request a total registration fees for a type. A registration list can, which is another way of saying it must also return the number of attendees that are registered for the conference from an institution. Which I'm assuming that's what I have. Affiliation. Affiliation from an institution. I'll figure that when I need to figure that. First, let me figure out this add registration function. Basically, if person exists, do not add, else add, right? That's all I'm doing. I just want to go ahead and look at what public functions I have available to me that can help me figure this out. Where's my phone? Just figure out what's going on over here. Alright, I want to see the simplest way that I can find a value in a queue list. If it has to be done manually, I can use a queue list iterator, I'm sure. So if I were to do a queue list, which is no, then registration doesn't have a iterator, so that wouldn't work. Append, assign, at, back, begin, capacity, count, first, front, index of insert. I do not see any fines, but let me see if I can use the okay, no, it doesn't work, so I'm just gonna have to do it manually. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll create a for loop for int I equal to 0, I is less than, what the hell is my attendees list called again? It's called m underscore attendees list. Okay, so m underscore, I think I'm just going to create a default constructor just so then I know what's going on. I++, okay? Because I am allowed to add new functions. If m underscore attendee list at position I, which is a registration dot in registration, let me just go ahead and read this. I need to access the person, okay? So m underscore attendee, m underscore attendee dot get name is equal to r I'll do the get attendee actually. I'll also do the get attendee here because it won't work. Get attendee dot get name is equal to get attendee dot get name, and I'll just enclose this within parentheses. So if the names are the same, and I'll just copy this. So the names are the same, right? Dot get email are the same, so get email dot get email, and the emails are the same. In that case, I'm just going to say qdebug cannot add she who exists. Now I'll just do a new line and I'll edit that outright and I'll return false. Else, which means, hey, maybe the names match but the emails are different, or maybe the names don't match and the emails are the same. In that case, it's fine. Because the only condition I'm looking for a false condition is one where both the names and the emails are the same. Let me just make sure about that before I mess up again. No two registrations are allowed to have attendees with the same email address unless the names are different. Cool. No two registrations allowed. No two registrations. I was even telling myself try static. This. I'm annoyed with how this thing is phrased out. Anyway, worst comes to worst, I'll have some marks knocked off me, but hey, what can I do about that, right? No two registrations can have the same name and the same email, else then within my m underscore attendee list, I can do a dot insert and queue size const iterator. No, that doesn't make much sense. Let me jump over to the docs really quick and see if I can just do an insert. Let's see, where do I need to go? First, here we go, here's an insert. I can pass in a queue size iterator, or it returns an iterator, okay. Can I just do a insert via the square parentheses? Returns the item, so that doesn't work, okay. So I'm gonna have to do an insert. And my queue list, let me just make sure my queue list, registration list, it is a registration, okay. So dot insert, I'll just insert R, right? And return true. No matching function. No matching member function for call to insert. M underscore attendee list. What's going on here? Inserts. Overload function. I don't need an overload function. Oh, I forget what it is. The function is append R, and that should, yeah, cool. And then I return true. So basically, I check the whole thing. If at any point I find a match, I'll return false. If not, wait a minute, this is going to be an issue. Because if the first one doesn't match, doesn't mean it exists, right? So they should actually be removed. Control X. I'll get that out of here, and I'll do it here. Right. So the first part will check if the value exists anywhere by using I to go through the entire list. If at any point we return false, we obviously won't execute this code, but if we don't, we'll come out, we'll add the value, and then we will return true. And let me be more descriptive here. Cannot add a registration with the same name and same email address. Okay. The bool is registered. That one I can do the same thing. Right, I can just copy this. And instead of returning false, instead of doing any of this actually, I'm here. Then I can do if m underscore attendee list at position I dot get attendee dot get name is equal to n. In that case, I will return true because hey, because if the only thing they are searching for is the name and not the associated email address, then it must be true. Let me grab this. Let me open up the diagram. Let's see, where are you? Is registered, which takes a queue string called n. N has to be name. It can't, even if it meant email, in that case it can check email, but that doesn't mean the person is still the same. But if that's what the requirements are, I'm not going to change that. Return true. And if any point outside that, I will return false. Which there is another way for me to do this, right? If it were both a name here and say a queue string, which represented the email, what I can do is I can essentially copy this part of the function, paste it into this function, and then I can just call this function within my add registration. And if it's false, I will not add. And if it's true, I won't add. And if it's false, I will add. But the way it works here is if I find it, then I'll say I'm returning false because that registration adding did not work. What's wrong here? Breakpoint. Okay. Cool. And then total fee, total registration list. Delete R. This is fine. These two I need to come back to because I need to now tap into the queue object. Let's just do a control B, and I'll do. I mean, it takes a while to build. That's always a good sign. Now, I'm going to create a registration list called regList. Let me also just add a default constructor. Okay. Registration list. I added a default constructor which will run, when there is no parameters passed to it. Actually, I don't need to. No, that's fine. I can go to refactor and I can add definition. Right. And the only thing I'm going to do is m_attend list. What else values do I have? That's all. Then that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to initialize it to an empty queue list. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to this main. I have my registration list. I'm going to do my reg list dot add registration, and I'm going to add reg1, right? And I'm going to do it again, reg2. And these obviously need to be references because they're taking pointer objects. Pointer object is pointed to memory. And when we pass by reference, we are also pointing by memory. Just checking some messages here. Alright, so this should have an issue when I run these two. But anyway, let's do a control S to save, a control B to build. It's taken some time, so I'm confident in that. Cool, and I'll just run it. I'll go to my here and I'll see cannot add a registration with the same name and email address, and that's what we wanted, right? So I'll stop this and I'll get rid of that. I'll call regList again and I'll add registration and I'll pass a reference to the student student. And now here's the question. Let's look at our student. Our student is just P1 with some additional values. Our guest is just P1 with additional values. However, the name and the email are still the same. And if I look at this requirement, it states again, no two registrations are allowed to have attendees with the same email address unless the names are the same. Unless the names are different, right? Which just means if the name and the email are the same, do not add that person to the registration list because that's redundant. Which means this is a copy of reg1, copy of reg1 with an added member, and so is this. So if I do a control B to build, And if I do a control R to run, yeah, I should still get the same problem because it doesn't matter if they're students or guests and they have additional details. Their name and email address are still the same. And that's pretty cool, the way it's been handled. So I don't need to go ahead and do any of that. However, if I go to regList and I dot add registration, and let me add registration 4, and I can also add registration 3. So regList dot add registration reg3. If we notice, I created these earlier today. Reg3 and reg4 are person P3 and P4 with Azura, so the same name as the above two but a different email. And person 4 is just a different person entirely with a different email address. And obviously these are issues because I need to pass them by reference to make clear that these are memory objects. Control B to build, Control R to run. And there we go. I only have 3 errors because I have 3 copies, that being 1, 2, and 3. This one runs successfully, this one runs, well, they all run successfully, but only these two and this one actually adds them to the registration list. And if I go back to my registration list, let me end that and close it. Let me go to my is registered. I can just try that out. So let me come down here. I don't need the student to string. I don't need that. Registration list dot is registered, and I'll pass in a few names. Let's pass in Azura. I'll copy this. Let me scroll. Azura. Bob doesn't exist at all, and I'll pass in Ash Ketchum. Control B to build, Control R to run, application output, true, false, and true, right? Because there is a person named Azura, there is no person named Bob, and there is a person named Ash Ketchum within my registration list. This is why registration lists are so bad. Not clearly defined requirements. So I am getting a little thirsty. I should have grabbed water or maybe coffee, but I'll go on a little longer. So that's fine. These two should, okay, so I'm just gonna add something up here and say complete and complete, right? The total fee, okay, this is also complete, the destructor. The total fee and the total registration. If I go back to my document and look at the requirements, I should be able to query a reg list by the name to see if the person is already registered for the conference, which is what we've done. That's fine. Also, the registration list should also return the number of attendees that are registered for the conference from an institution. This is the part that annoys me. What do you mean from an institution? From an institution, like this part, this is annoying. From an institution. If I look at my UML diagram, where's my image? It's the same thing, right? So let me look at my UML diagram. The person has 3 attributes. The one that's important is affiliation. When they say institute, do they mean by that M underscore affiliation? By stating, let's say, a person is affiliated with some university, one person is associated with some company, the third person is associated with the same university, and the fourth person is associated with that same business. Does that mean that I need to do total registration for any of those affiliations? Is that why I have this input string called A? Because it can't be for M underscore attendee, it can't be for booking date, it can't be for standard fee, it can't be for qualification, nor can it be for category. It's something for A. The only A that's matching here is affiliation. So what that means is, let me go and shorten my affiliations, okay? Let me just, for the testing purposes. Let me go into my main, and just change my affiliations to uh, uni. These ones don't matter because they won't run. Well, this is fine. P3 registration 3. Yeah, this is run. So I'll also make you uni, and I'll make Ash Ketchum associated with Pokemon, which means when I run my uh, total registration function, it should take in this A, which I think means affiliation, and return the total number of people registered for that affiliation. So to do that, what I can do is I can create some int total registered equals to 0. I can then do for, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this, and I can get rid of this above. And what I'm going to do is if m underscore attendee list at I dot get attendee to grab the person dot get affiliation is equal to A, in that case, all I'm going to do is I'll increment total registered, right? Plus equals 1. And then that will handle it. And all at the end, the only thing I have to do is return total registered. Very straightforward. There's nothing that's really hard here, right? It's very simple. However, that PDF is written by someone who is writing at a high school level. It is just a nice way of saying the requirements are not clearly stated out. And I know what the comeback will be. Well, you should be able to infer from context. There is no context. It's quite annoying. So anyway, that's what total registration should be, is my assumption. So if I go to main, I'm just gonna copy this. And I'm gonna do total registered who are, that's wrong, registered with uni, and then I'll do reg list dot total registration. Did I get the function name correct? Total registration, yeah. Total registration, which takes in a Q string, which in my case will just be uni, and this should be 2. And I'll copy it and I'll do it again. Total registered with the affiliation of Pokemon. And I'll come here and I'll change this Q string into Pokemon. I'll do Control B to build. It's taking more than 2 seconds, so that's great. And I'll run Control R. Total registered with uni is 2, and total registered with Pokemon 1. Very simple, very cool. I'll stop that, I'll close it. The reason why I'm stopping it, so with that stop, then I'm closing it, is typically if you don't, when you try to exit Qt Creator, it tells you that the background tasks are still running. If you close that application instance, it won't give you that, it won't throw that message box at you. Now, coming back to registration list, we have one last function called total fee. Let's go to our requirements. Similarly, you can request a total registration for a type of registration, be it student, student reg, guest reg, or all. So I can only accept one of 4 values. And if we look at it, it takes in a total fee called T and must return a double. Standard fee is a double. The amount they are paying is just a double, right? However, it says that there can only be one of 4 types, so one of these 4. But the next line it states that I am expected to use Qt's meta object system to access the type of a registration in registration list. which is a little odd because what I think I can just do this, right? I can just come here into total fee. I can just go ahead, I can copy this entire thing. I can change this on total registered to total fee. Total fees, I guess. Which is not going to be an int, it's going to be a double. Right, a double. I'm just going to make it 0.0. I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to get rid of this. Then I can just do this. If m underscore 10d list and position I, grab that. That's what the issue is. I see. Okay. They write because I cannot grab the class name. So even if I pass t in here, let's say for an instance, let me just come here. Let's say I call the total fee function. Okay, so I called total fee, and t stands for type, and I passed in registration. Right, I passed in that. How am I going to check for that? Because I can go to the attendee list, I can do the dot, and I can grab my attendee. And then what do? Affiliation email, get name, and toString. None of these four functions give me the class name, okay? However, so there's no way for me to cross-check against that T standing for type. So what I'm going to do is, I'll leave you right here while I get something to drink because the solution is very straightforward. The implementation is not very straightforward, however. So I'll figure this out and I'll come back.